Darius.
Hi, Shaida.
So Darius, thank you so much for coming and joining us today for the teaching point. And could you maybe introduce a little bit about yourself and about AI Singapore?
Of course, my name is Darius Liu. I'm the head of strategy and partnerships at AI Singapore's product team. This is the team that builds products that we open source for the community's use, almost like a digital public good or common infrastructure, so to speak. Right? If you take a step back, AI Singapore as an organization has been around since 2017. It is the government's national AI program, and we exist to bring the benefits of AI and AI solutions from academia into the industry. Right? So we do this via research, we do this via organizing grand challenges, for example, and we do this also by putting out open source tools and products, which is what my team does.
I think just to kick things, get things started or to kick things off, could you maybe explain a little bit more, share a little bit more about your first experience in delving into the world of AI?
Sure. I guess when you mean AI in this context, it's probably generative AI as we understand it, right? And like most of us, the first introduction or the brush with AI is when ChatGPT came onto the scene somewhere around end of 2022. And that's when, the Singapore government and AI Singapore set up and said that, look, this is probably a step change in how the AI landscape is going to evolve. And that led to a rethink about how we want to position the products team, and that's where this initiative about large language models for Southeast Asia came about.
I see. So having that, surge of interest in ChatGPT or in generative AI, in your opinion, what would you say is, or the level of awareness that people have of the amount of AI or generative AI at the very least that they are using on a daily basis?
I think it's increasing. Maybe if you asked this question to me maybe a year or year and a half ago, I think people may not fully understand how much of generative AI, even in that level of development, is embedded into the tools and the solutions that we use every day. Right? Like if you talk to a voice bot, it could very well go into some kind of a large language model, which generates a solution. Whether the solution is good or bad, that's up to you to decide, but the solution does embed some form of AI. If it's not a large language model, there could be a natural language processing engine behind it, or for some other applications, perhaps some computer vision, right, which is also another branch of AI. So I think fast forward to today, I think there's a lot more appreciation about how much AI is being embedded, to the extent that people are starting to second guess whether somebody on the other line who was talking to them is actually a bot or is actually a human. So the awareness is increasing, but I would say that there's still a ways to go.
Could you maybe share some examples, maybe in Singapore as well as the region, on how large language models have been put into place and how were they effective?
Yeah, for sure. So I think this is an example that's, of course, has been made public, so I'm free to share this. So if you happen to go to Indonesia and you speak into the Gojek app, right, to call a car, to make a payment using the GoPay application, you tend to speak into it if you're an Indonesian, of course, Bahasa Indonesia, or if you happen to speak one of the major dialects like Balinese or Sundanese and everything, you are able to do that, right? And the reason why you're able to do that is because the GoTo group, the maker of Gojek and GoPay app, has integrated a variant of a large language model that is able to be conversant in Southeast Asian languages, specifically Indonesian languages. We are proud to say that we worked with GoTo, we as in AI Singapore worked with GoTo to create the model, which is called Sahabat AI. And it's serving millions of Indonesians as we speak. So this is one good example of localization and how language is important. So if you rewind the clock 1 year ago and you tried the same thing using one of the Western, American models or the Chinese models, and you try to speak to it in Bahasa Indonesia, it probably doesn't understand you. You try to even speak to it in English, but with our own Singaporean accent. It does a pretty not so good job, right? You have to do the fake American accent, and so it is a problem, right? It directly impacts the usability of AI.
True. maybe we could take it back a little bit and we talk about how it has been effective using like the Gojek and the Sahabat thing. But maybe for those of our listeners, or even for some of us who are not as knowledgeable about how it works, maybe could you share with us a little bit more about what are the key steps that you took in terms of getting the data, not specific data, but like just the process. Yeah.
Correct. So of course, the first port of call is whatever is open in the digital realm, right? The internet. And unfortunately, there's not much Southeast Asian data on the internet, but whatever is there, we take it, we sieve out those parts that are not suitable. For example, they are mainly advertising or machine translation or something a little bit more not safe for work kind of content. We filter out the copyrighted material because we are very cognizant that we need to be do this properly. And we end up with a decently sized corpus, not very big, but get off to a good start. What we do a lot is to work with our partners in the region.
I see.
Because a lot of the Southeast Asian data is not in digital form. Even if it's in digital form, it's not in a form that's consumable by a model training algorithm. So for example, it's in a PDF, or it's in an OCR, or it's in a scanned document. So a lot of work goes into processing that data, to cleaning it up, to putting it into a format that is able to be ingested by a model training algorithm, and then we add it to newer and newer generations of the model that we are creating, and we put it out in open source.
If you were able to quantify it maybe in a time frame, then how long would this process actually take?
The first iteration took about 10 months.
Okay.
And then obviously the pace of change accelerates thereon, right? So the next iteration took maybe 6 or 7 months. And again, the next iteration took about 4 months. So the time scale of the model development is decreasing.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Welcome to the AI arms race.
So it's actually interesting because I was expecting you to say that it's going to take about maybe a year for the initial legwork because of the lack of data and how much you really have to sieve out, right? And how much you have to work with partners and whatever jurisdictions that they have and whatever logistics or basically regulations that they have, it would take slightly longer. So I'm actually surprised 10 months for a considerable amount of change is actually quite fast. And the fact that in every run it becomes faster, it just goes to show how much AI can be integrated into our work life, our daily life, and as well as at a systemic level. So given that we are so, I would say maybe in the past year or so, we're acclimatized to AI, right? May I then ask, do you think that there's still a growing stigma if I say that I use AI in my job?
I think there would be a stigma if you say that you do not use AI in your job. Again, that whole perception has changed.
Right.
2 years ago, if you use AI in your job, people think you are trying to cut corners or you're lazy or whatever. Today, if you do not use your AI, they'll be asking, why aren't you sort of working smart or using the latest tools or, getting with the whole sort of flow of where the technology is going. So I think that mindset has definitely shifted, I would say. Yeah. It is about using what's best out there rather than dogmatically sticking to some way of doing things which has worked well in the past, but with the way that technology is moving, it may not be the best way to go forward.
Do you think then, if let's say you were to compare the younger working force with maybe those who are more mature, and do you think that there is still that struggle for the mature ones to come into terms with the more AI-driven way of work, or do you think that right now it's a lot more of a open environment and even the mature, adults are a lot more receptive, and a lot more interested in trying out?
Yeah, I think to me, it's a bit of a myth that the so-called more mature workers in the industry find it more difficult. AI is one of those technologies where if you bring in domain expertise, if you bring in experiences from the manual way of doing things and you utilize AI, you overlay AI solution on top of that, those act as multipliers to be able to allow you to use AI in a more intelligent manner. right? Versus, let's say, for example, somebody coming fresh out of school or working for 1 or 2 years and hasn't had those experiences in the workforce, hasn't stepped on some of these landmines before, and then you take the AI output and say, what do I make of this? How do I review this? How do I critically assess what the AI is telling me? The ability to do that is a meta level skill, it's a higher level skill that comes with experience and domain expertise. And more experienced workers do have an edge in that. So in order for AI to be harnessed, it has to be coupled with real world experiences. It's not just a be all and end all. It's not a magic genie that you can. So just ask anything and you get the right answer. Right?
So I would imagine that even creating the correct environment and process will allow not only the mature working adults to be more receptive, but also create a process that's a lot more elevated and can synchronize work at a much faster rate.
Yeah, correct. So I mean, if you one good example would be this idea of this idea of you have a model and you press a button and the output comes out, versus the need to be able to structure a series of models into a certain workflow, right? The ability to synthesize a workflow into various model architectures is a skill that perhaps is not as easy as pressing a button and getting it out, right? You need to understand the business use case, you need to understand where the efficiencies are and where the bottlenecks are, and that is something that comes with domain expertise, like I said, and experience.
Okay, well, I think this section definitely is a lot insightful, and it definitely opens up the thought of not having AI go away anytime soon.
No, it's
because
not
I think
going.
people used to think that it's a phase and it will go away, but I think now that it is a lot more integrated in our work life, I think people understand that it's probably a permanent solution here on out.
Yeah, definitely a permanent feature, right? If you take a look at how technology has evolved, where are the step changes in the last maybe 30 years? Advent of computers, mobile, and now AI.
Yeah. We mentioned quite a great deal about large language models. We also mentioned about how AI has been effective in making sure that it's not just a copy and paste situation, but it's also integrating it into the system, having that knowledge be complementary instead of it being the driving force, right? So if let's say we were based on the residents or the people end users that you've met in your time in AI Singapore and even in your experience with working with AI projects, could you maybe share some of the tips that you would recommend to any user? Because we always expect that want to learn lifelong, right? So even in their adulthood or even as they're a teenager and who may think that AI is such a daunting task or such a daunting concept, what would be some recommendations that you would give them to start things off with AI?
Yeah, so the recommendation I would say, my advice to these learners to be is don't start with AI as the first concept. Start with what problems in your life are you trying to solve or you could potentially automate, right? Will you automate letter generation, or could you automate some kind of a data processing, whatever it is, right? Or email writing, right? Everybody writes emails to some extent.
Yeah.
Could you automate that? And then you have we all watch YouTube, right? That would be a good place to start. Not all YouTube videos are the best, admittedly, but it's a good place to start. And you can search online for tools. There are now AI tools for just about anything you can possibly imagine. So start with what you potentially think that you can solve using AI or improve using AI, and look for something that works in that domain, right, or works for that task. And I can almost guarantee you that there will be some kind of application with a free or freemium model that will be able to speak to that. The other advice I would give is that there are a lot of very good education courses online for the Coursera, or AI Singapore also puts out this very fundamental open source online learning called AI for Everyone. And as its name suggests, it's really for a very introductory course on what AI is, what AI isn't, what it can be used for, what it cannot be used for. And that's really a good place to start.
So I agree. I think there are a lot of materials out there, and I I like the way you mentioned where you look at the problem first before you look at the solution. And problem solving is such a crucial task given how complex is our daily lives, right? Be it in our personal life or in our hobbies and definitely in our work life or at the systemic level. Now, as we talk about learners, right, when we in education we always talk about the concept of understanding and mastering 21st century competencies. So these are like your critical thinking, self-directed learning, as well as your problem solving. How do you think AI is able to still foster these skills or competencies despite them performing the task for you?
Right. So one of the things that AI in its current shape or form is very good at is idea generation. For example, you want to write a poem of, I don't know, Hari Raya or something, right? You can tell the AI, give me 5 poems.
Right.
And you look at the 5 and say that, okay, maybe this one is good. Can you expand on this one? I like this passage. I don't like this passage. Can you give me another 5? And the way at which you evaluate the 5, that's critical thinking, right? So you don't necessarily have to go down to the writing the poem itself, but you have to elevate yourself to that. Okay, I can review the output. Just like how in a traditional corporate workplace, you start off as a grunt worker doing the manual labor, and then you have the supervisor who's reviewing the work. Now, replace all the interns or the entry-level workers with an AI tool. Right? And then here you are forced to elevate yourself to a reviewer role. And that's where I see the workforce going. The workforce over time will develop and upscale naturally because the AI is able to take on a lot of these other tasks.
I also agree. I think that once you kind of not eliminate, but once you're able to complement any job with that already first line of education, then naturally a person or even a young person or no matter the age, it's required to kind of push themselves forward, right?
Yes.
And look at it from an analytical standpoint. Now, you mentioned about how the workforce is shifting it that way. How else do you see AI shaping the future? Maybe near future or maybe in 5-6 years to come?
In terms of shaping the workforce, like I said, it sort of will elevate everybody's role in a way to a higher level abstraction of whatever task that you are employed to do, right? So for code reviewers like you programmers to code reviewers, right? From code reviewers to sort of code deployers, something like that. So I think just like how in computer programming 20 years ago, everybody wrote in a certain thing called assembly language. Nobody does that anymore because the programming language sort of does that for you, right? Yeah, and in future, maybe you probably may not write code as much as people do today. It may just be pseudocode or logic that you prompt the engine and the AI will generate the code for you. But whether or not that code is efficient, whether that code is gives the output that you want, or if you have 5 versions of the code, how do you make sure that you are able to understand which version works the best in the context that you provided it? That is the skill, right? It is no longer about generating the code. It's about reviewing and critically looking at the various aspects of the code to see whether or not it's fit for purpose. That's the skill that will naturally come because the jobs will call for it. Yeah, and human beings as a race, we are fully adaptable, and we've adapted in the past. We will adapt again.
So there's also that minor way. If we are going to be a bit over complacent, then you might end up in one of those pitfalls where we don't we either replicate what the AI can do, or we try to overcompensate or undercompensate, and therefore providing or creating gaps in the system itself.
Yeah, I think so. So I think, again, back to the point about fully understanding what AI at that current juncture is able to do or not. The underlying models, the solutions, what are the advantages, what are the disadvantages, I think that's really, really important. And I think if there's one thing that I would leave the listeners today, is really about fully understanding the nature of AI, right? The nature of the solution. It is there to perform certain tasks in certain ways, and it's not there to perform all tasks that you ask about it, right?
Correct.
And the ability to distinguish one from the other is what will make a good AI user versus somebody who's maybe a little bit less clued in on the topic.
Well, I think this conversation has been helpful to me, and I think it will be helpful to our listeners as well, because not only do we first understand what is AI, but the different components of AI, like large language models, and how within the Southeast Asian region, it's so important for us to have this element to ensure that whatever processes that we're using, it's contextually accurate, and it's also acclimatized to our specific needs. So thank you so much, Darius.
Thank you, Shaida.
I definitely learned a lot, and I think our listeners have as well. So thank you.
Thank you so much.